Hello, everybody. Welcome. It is Tuesday, July 30th, and we are doing mock interview number 106 for an administrative assistant role. My name is Albert. I'm the founder of Albert's List, and I'll be your host today. And with me, as usual, is my co-host, Cory, founder of CareerShakers.com. And as we've done every week since the beginning of the pandemic, we're doing a mock interview today. With us is Lucy. She's a member of our latest interviewing bootcamp cohort, and she has graciously stepped up today to be a mock interviewee. Cory will ask the questions, Lucy will answer, and then Cory will provide feedback. And those of you in the audience can watch along, root her on, and also ask your own questions. All right, without further ado, Cory, over to you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. It's good to be back after my vacation. I just threw into the chat the job description we're going to be practicing today. It's for the Orange County Fire Authority department. And the exciting thing is Lucy actually got an interview for this role, and she'll be interviewing next week. It's supposed to be a first round interview as a panel. We obviously don't have a panel today, but we'll be practicing interview questions to help get her ready. And as we do every time, we want to give all of our brave volunteers a huge round of applause for putting themselves out there for educational and entertainment purposes. And of course, we want to give Lucy a platform to go ahead and talk about her background, talk about the kind of roles and jobs that she's looking for. And that way, anyone who is watching this later on, if you want to get in touch with Lucy or you have potential leads or jobs for her, please reach out. So yeah, Lucy, why don't you go ahead and give a quick intro and talk about the kind of jobs and roles you're looking for?
Yeah, so I would say I'm mainly looking for administrative type of positions, as well as project coordination, project management type of positions, preferably in the Southern California area or or remote opportunities. But I'm very open. So if anyone has any jobs or opportunities, please feel free to reach out to me.
Great. Perfect. All right. So are you ready to get started?
Yeah.
All right. So, Lucy, can you tell me about your administrative experience?
Yeah, of course. So I would say I have extensive administrative experience. When I was a project coordinator for the digital marketing and IT department, I was heavily involved with planning out these large-scale PI planning events across teams and departments, where the teams would showcase the work they plan to accomplish over the next couple of months. So basically, I would send out these meeting invitations months in advance and then monitor who could attend and who could not in a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet. And then throughout the event itself, I would monitor the Q&A and the WebEx chat and ensure I was readily available to answer any questions anyone might have about the event or if they had any accesses that they needed. And then I also created slides as well as a virtual mural collaboration board with an interactive timeline that let everyone know where they needed to be throughout the event itself. And I would also monitor and ensure the team stayed within a 5-minute time frame for their team level objective presentation so we didn't run over time. And at the end of the event, I conducted a confidence vote WebEx poll where I asked team members to basically vote 1 for low confidence up to 5 for high confidence. I encourage people to talk out loud and comment on why they voted for a particular number, especially for those that voted a 3 or below. I then downloaded the results and calculated percentages and saw a steady rise in confidence amongst leadership and team members over the years. And I would say my meticulous planning and organization for these events in turn led to a 30% increase in team member participation, as well as greater enthusiasm and engagement for the event throughout my 3 years of running them.
Okay, great. What about other administrative responsibilities have you had?
Yeah, so I would say outside of that, I do have some experience monitoring budgets. when I was a data analyst for the enterprise data organization, I was in charge of monitoring $500,000 budgets for cloud data migration and onboarding projects. And basically, I would download these emails and then note the point of contact, estimated budget, as well as the estimated time needed to complete. And then I would prioritize the relevant projects. And this in turn helped me identify which projects that we should focus on first and which ones we might need to look at later on.
Okay, good. All right. So move to the feedback portion here. So first, super powerful example, right? This is a great example, I guess, of showing instead of telling. So Lucy could have just said like, oh, yes, I have administrative experience. I've organized events and, I've helped, increase efficiency, increase the overall promoter score each year. But instead, she also walked us through an example of the event that she organized and how she ran it, talk to us a little bit about the administrative pieces of it, right? Like monitoring the chat, handling questions, doing the post-event survey, organization, and then the daily execution of it, which is all good. And then when I prompted you for other admin responsibilities, right, which is like, office work, budget reconciliation, travel, expenses, stuff like that. You talked about managing a budget, which is very good. That was also listed in the job description as well. So some of the areas that we still want to make sure that we're able to cover, right? That will give them confidence that you're fully capable of doing everything in the role would be like customer support, data entry, and um, there was some stuff around financial documents and budgeting, but I don't necessarily think that's super important. But doing like reconciliations and document management. So those are some of the other areas that if you have done stuff with that or related to it or know how to do it, you're going to want to share that as well, just to make sure you're covering all the bases for the assistant role.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. And just curious, but when you say reconciliation, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so usually for these, they're gonna have give you like a bunch of receipts, and then you're gonna reconcile them with the bank statements and the credit card statements to make sure that all the expenses that the employees are logging are valid, right? And everything matches up.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Mhm. All right. So, can you tell me about a time when you had to deal with a difficult customer or teammate and how you handled that experience?
Yeah, I can. But when I was a substitute Scrum Master for the digital marketing and IT department, I remember there was a time when I would often reach out to the wait, sorry, let me backtrack. Okay, as a project coordinator for the digital marketing and IT department, I would often reach out to Scrum Masters for their team breakout links for our PI planning event. And I remember this one particular Scrum Master could not provide me with this link no matter how many times I asked. And so what I ended up doing is I privately reached out to the Scrum Master and asked him to please stop ignoring my messages and to please send over his team breakout link. He soon called me and mentioned that he was dealing with a lot personally in his life. That's why he wasn't able to send his link at the moment, but he would make sure to get to it as soon as he could. A few days later, he sent over his team breakout link. I called him to thank him for his link, as well as apologize for my insensitivity towards his situation. I reiterated to him how important the team breakout links were for running our breakout sessions during our PI planning event. He agreed with me that the links were important and that he would work with me in the future to ensure that I got his links on time and we didn't face a similar situation like this again.
Okay. Okay. Are you reading from a script?
I'm actually not.
Okay. So, for some of the like more soft skills, like touchy-feely questions, you're going to want to try to add as much inflection in your voice as possible, to make it come across as more of like a natural story. Um, and that way you can convey like empathy, and or excitement or concern or things like that, right? I think that'll
Yeah.
help with some of the delivery of the story. Um, Now, in terms of the answer selection itself, right? So the question was, tell me about a time you had to deal with a difficult coworker or teammate, and then how you handled it. So in this particular case, do you feel like your coworker was actually being difficult here?
Well, I mean, I feel like it kind of depends on how you look at it. So I would say it was kind of difficult to reach the coworker, but then, once he finally replied back, I would say he was pretty agreeable from
Right,
that point on. Yeah.
right, right. So what do you think the point of the question was, right? Tell me about a time you had to work with a difficult coworker and how you handled it. What are they trying to understand if they ask you this question?
Yeah, so I think you're trying to understand how you deal with people. And in this particular case, they're probably looking for more of a stronger example of, a coworker that was actually really hard to deal with and not exactly someone that just ignored you and finally replied back after some time.
Mhm. Yep, yep, exactly. Because they're looking to deal with, like, that conflict management aspect of it, right? And in this case, there wasn't really a conflict to manage because turns out this person had a very difficult thing happening in their personal life, and that's why they weren't able to get it back to you, but they still gave it back to you in time, right, for the event.
Yeah, so I'm just curious about what do you think would be a good example?
So anytime you've had to work with like someone who was really rude or mean, or maybe someone gave you some feedback that you didn't agree with, or someone maybe blamed you for something that wasn't necessarily your fault, right? Like something where you would have more of a conflict, and ideally something where it's not necessarily your fault. Because in the interview context, right, you wouldn't want to bring up stuff that maybe you had done as a mistake. Granted, people do make mistakes on the job, but from an interview perspective, you don't want to present those types of opportunities unless they ask you for them.
Okay, that makes sense. So I guess with that in mind, I should probably look into a stronger example for that question.
Yep, yep. Because also the solution there isn't as powerful either, right? Because in this one,
Yeah.
how do you solve this? Well, you just communicate and he gives you the link when you ask, right? So it's like there's like that's not really impressive from a interviewer perspective, right?
Yeah, that's true. I'll work on finding a better story for that question.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. And by the way, anyone in the group chat who's attending here, if you have any questions that you want us to practice, you have questions just for me or for Albert or Lucy, feel free to utilize the chat function. We can practice your own questions. We can just answer your questions in general. All right, next question. Tell me, how would you deal with competing priorities and deadlines?
Yeah, so if I well, basically how I deal with competing priorities and deadlines, I would basically prioritize them based on their urgency and importance, and as well as the costiness to the organization itself. And I would say from there on, I would look at them and then see if there's a way to organize it and prioritize it well so that it would more suit the the project. Let me see. Hmm. Yeah.
You're doing good. Keep going.
Okay, let me see. Yeah, and I would say one example of this was when I was managing budgets for the enterprise data organization. So I would basically monitor these budgets for cloud data migration and onboarding projects. And then I would basically see which projects are the most urgent and important. And I will put those on the top of the list in the spreadsheet. And the ones that are less urgent or possibly longer in time, I would place them lower on the spreadsheet. And then from there, I would go down the list, starting from the most urgent projects. And then I would move down to the least urgent ones.
Okay. And so as you have to deprioritize some other tasks or projects and things, you're obviously going to upset some people. So how do you handle that aspect of it?
Yeah, so I always encourage very open and honest communication with everyone. So basically, if I notice that there's some conflicts with some of the projects where some people might have differing views on how urgent a project is compared to others, I'll try to schedule meetings with those people so we can discuss their issues. And then I can see if we might need to restructure the priorities around. And then I would also try to address any issues they might have regarding why they believe that project is more important than other projects that I have on the list. And then I would basically try to work out with those people and the other people in the organization to see if I'm able to address their concerns well and we're able to resolve all their issues effectively.
Okay, great. Now, in your day-to-day role, instead of having to prioritize projects, you're probably going to be given multiple different tasks from different teams, and you may not have enough time in one day to complete all those different tasks. So, how are you going to then handle those types of prioritizations when you can't necessarily schedule meetings with everyone to explain why you don't have time to do something in one day?
Yeah, so in that case, if I was given a set of tasks instead of projects, I would basically write down all the tasks that are assigned to me, and then I would see which ones I think I could try to knock off straight off the bat. And then, if there's other tasks that I feel like might take longer or I need more feedback from the manager or clarification, I'll make note of that and try to reach out to the manager while I'm also taking care of other tasks. So basically, I would try to multitask if I could, just to make sure I'm able to complete all the tasks on time. And if for whatever reason I'm not able to do so, or it seems like there's way too much on my plate, I'll definitely let my manager know ahead of time so that they're aware that there might be certain tasks that I can't finish right now, but I would definitely try to get to it the next day or even the end of the day if possible.
Okay, good, very good. So I think with this one, you got all the components right. I mean, the answer is correct. Order of operations is correct. You're supposed to prioritize. You go based on importance, urgency, etc., and then making sure you're able to proactively handle any of the backlash or fallout that comes when you ever have to deprioritize something or tell someone that their project isn't as important as they thought it was, and how you would handle that conflict. So just make sure you kind of putting all that together up front, as opposed to having
Okay.
to have me ask the follow-up questions, right? But you got everything correct.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that sounds good. I mean, I guess like for this one, do you think it would have been better if I provided a more concrete example to go off of?
I mean, you give an example, right, of a time where you had to manage the project timeline, and then you categorized it by urgency and importance. So
Oh,
the
okay.
example was fine.
Yeah, so I would just try to focus on going to more detail from the start, so you don't ask as many follow-up questions next time.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So thinking about like what happens afterwards, what defines important, because everyone's going to think it's important, right? So,
Yeah.
okay. All right. So imagine we hired you here in this role, and I ask you to reconcile credit card bills for the fuel. How would you go about doing this, and what are some key things you're going to be looking for?
Yeah, so first I would like to clarify and ask about how large the receipts are, like what the quantity would be for them.
Some of our fuel bills can be like like 100 something dollars. It's for the fire trucks.
Okay. Would you mind repeating the question?
Yep. So imagine we hired you here as our admin assistant, and one of your responsibilities is to help reconcile the credit card bills for fuel. How would you go about doing this to make sure that it's done well? And what are some key things you want to double check or look out for?
Yeah, so I would say I would basically first I would start by compiling all of the receipts together. So if there's a central location where they place them, whether it's in a Google Drive or if they put it on box somewhere in a folder, first I would see, if there's a central location where they put all of these receipts. And if that's not necessarily the case, then I would try to reach out to the respective managers that might be in charge of those type of receipts and try to compile it together on my end, just so that I have everything in place together before I would start compiling them together. And then I would say the key things that I would look out for would be to make sure that the cost is correct as well as the item it's supposed to be for. And then I'll also look at the dates because it's possible that they would like me to compile it for a specific date range, and I definitely wouldn't want to go outside of that range for whatever reason. So I'll definitely want to make sure I have all of the correct receipts for the necessary departments all together before I even start up Microsoft Excel and start writing out all of these receipts and categorizing them by the cost. And then I would say something else that I would look out for is I would try to look at the more expensive options. And if for whatever reason there's a certain budget that they're looking for, I would try to make sure that don't go beyond that. And if for whatever reason, when I categorize it, I notice that we have spent so much money on this particular component, I'll definitely make note of it on the spreadsheet so that I can talk with the respective department or manager and just let them be aware of this major issue we have with spending for this particular item so that we can make sure to that this won't happen again in the future and we can stay within budget for the future expenditures.
That was great. That was perfect. Right. Talked about some things, some creative things outside of the box, right? Making sure that you're within a specific date range, monitoring like really expensive purchases, making sure that it's justified from a business perspective. I think you covered all of the potential follow-up questions. It was a very comprehensive answer. That was awesome.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. There was a question for you, Lucy. How long did it take for you to get the panel interview? And did you have to do a written test or anything before the panel interview?
Yeah, so there was a testing component to it. It was an in-person computer test, and it was basically covering technical skills in Microsoft Word and Excel. So basically what they had a document and a spreadsheet, and they had a whole number of questions and tasks that they wanted you to do. And then they basically gave you about an hour or so to complete both portions of it. And then once you finished that, they graded it. And then as long as you passed 70% or above, then you get invited to the oral interview rounds. So I would say the whole process in itself, it took a few weeks. So because I believe I had that test, I think it was 1 or 2 weeks ago, and then they spent about a week or two just just scoring the test, and then I finally heard back from them.
Cool. And then someone in the chat says there's no mention of software to use to reconcile. In this case, Lucy doesn't work there yet, so she doesn't know what software they use. She mentioned how she would do it in Excel if they didn't have a specific software. So she talked about how she would have to manually collect the um, the receipts either through like mail or a folder or something, or she'd have to check um, Google Drive or Dropbox or whatever, and then she'll collect all the receipts and then she'd reconcile them via Excel, since she doesn't know what type of software that they use. And this is the best way to kind of answer these, right? Like, you don't want to go in the interview and be like, "Oh, well, I just use your software to reconcile it." And then they'll go, "Okay, well, what if you don't have a software?" Right? So it's easier to actually just do it like from an interview perspective. If you can explain how to do something manually, then when you can automate it with the software, then it actually just becomes a whole lot easier, right? So um, that's probably the best way to do it. And then if you wanted to and you were super confident, right, and you are familiar with different softwares, you could try to flip it and you could be like, "Oh, what type of reconciliation software do you guys use?" And then they'll tell you. And then if you've used it, then you can walk them through specifically how you would use it, like whatever modules, what functions you would use, how you would upload the receipts or whatever, what reports you would pull, etc. But you don't want to ask that if you're not able to actually talk about how you would use that specific software, right? Because then they'd be like, "Well, why did you ask me what software I use and then you just ignored it?" Right? So that's like one of those trickier things. Okay. Lucy, can you tell me about the most difficult problem that you've had to solve at work and how you did it?
Yeah, I I can most certainly do that. Let me see. Yeah, so when I was a data analyst for the enterprise data organization, I was in charge of monitoring human resources and operations data for employees and contractors, totaling around 700 or so. And basically, this contains sensitive, confidential information regarding their names, email addresses, and job positions. And basically, what I did is I ended up looking while creating these graph and chart visualizations, which allowed me to identify certain trends and inefficiencies. And it basically helped me revise the job descriptions by 15% because I was able to see that the employees and contractors, some of their job positions didn't necessarily match what exactly they were doing at the moment. So I would say that was a bit difficult for me to do. And it definitely required me to really understand the data more concretely and see how I could look at the data and compile it in such a way that I was able to really identify key issues. And then in turn, this allowed me to revise the job descriptions, which in turn led to much greater efficiency for the organization itself. And I would say that was rather difficult, but I was definitely willing to learn what I could, whether it's by going on Google or asking my coworker for any help or even asking the manager for clarifications so I could take the challenge and resolve it effectively and in a timely manner.
Can you elaborate on what made this so difficult?
Yeah, so basically, let me see. Yeah, so it was particularly difficult because of how large the data set was. And then what my manager had essentially wanted me to do was basically create these workforce strategy presentations that would depict how employees and contractors are moving around within the enterprise data organization. And then basically she wanted to know how many employees and contractors were coming in, how many were leaving. And it was particularly difficult because of how large and extensive the data set was. But because I was able to analyze it and create these graphs to help me visualize it, it definitely helped me identify key issues that really helped me grasp the data well enough that I was able to present it to my manager in a clear and comprehensive format.
Good. Okay. Amazing. So that part was the only thing that was missing, was just giving me that sense of the complexity, the amount of tricky data analysis you had to do, or how you had to clean the data first, or whatever it may be, right? Just making it sound, the problem itself, as complex as possible. And then, you can talk about like some of your creative solutions or how you were able to navigate some of that, right? Because you kind of skipped over the how and you went straight to the ending, right? You were like, this is what they asked me to do. It was really difficult. And then you went straight to, but I did it. And then we got these great, amazing results, right? We were able to identify new job descriptions, blah, blah, blah. So the part in the middle is also really important too, because this can show them you're good with data, you're comfortable with, complex Excel functions or whatever it may be that would be applicable for their admin role, right? Staying extremely organized, project management, um, all of the above. So don't miss out on those opportunities to kind of show your skills as well.
Yeah, of course. So definitely make sure to focus on that.
Mhm. Good. And that was a very good answer choice as well, because the problem itself was actually very, very difficult. So that was perfect. Okay. Why do you want to work here for the Orange County Fire Authority?
Yeah, so I would say I'm very interested in this position, mainly because I believe it really offers an opportunity to support a vital public services organization. Moreover, I feel like my experience in organizing data, preparing reports, as well as managing administrative tasks really aligns well with the responsibilities outlined for this position. Moreover, I'm very motivated by the chance to contribute to the efficiency and effectiveness of this organization, which I feel plays a really crucial role in community safety.
Okay, awesome. So the words you chose here are perfect, right? Now, this is one of those questions where, it's basically like, are you excited to work here? This is the one where they're going to want to see a little bit of a uptick in energy and expression and enthusiasm. Now, I know me and Albert have exchanged emails offline about your excitement for this role, but that aside, right? Like, if they do give you this question, this is the one, like of all the questions, this is the one where you gotta, put that smile on, even if it's not 100% legit, right? And it's from the very beginning, oh, I'm so excited about helping out the Orange County Fire Department for an essential service. I bring and you did it perfectly for those who are wondering how to answer like the why do you want to work here. You have to show them that you've done some research about the company and the projects and the products or whatever, and then you also have to talk a little bit about yourself, right, and how your experience is in a perfect alignment for the role, and then you're excited to have a really big impact, and that's exactly what Lucy did. So the only thing here, Lucy, is like when you say it, you kind of have to uh, put that smile on a little bit, and then bump up the energy level just a little bit for this particular question.
Yeah, so actually something interesting to note. So for this oral interview panel, apparently they're grading it. I don't know how exactly they're grading it, but they said you have to score an 80% or higher to pass this round. So yeah.
Hmm. I mean, I would assume like if it's a
Mm.
panel, everyone's gonna like score you out of 100 or something, and then they're probably gonna average it, and then they're probably saying you have to get at least above 80% from the average, is my guess.
Yeah, I mean that would make sense.
Yeah. Sorry, I hit a button. I'm back. Okay. Alrighty. Ooh, this is a good one. Lucy, how do you like to receive feedback? And then also, how do you like to give feedback?
Yeah, so I like to receive constructive and collaborative feedback. I enjoy private thank yous as well as seeing my work publicly recognized. When I was a project coordinator for the digital marketing and IT department, I would hold these retrospective meetings as well as have these retrospective boards where I would ask everyone what went well, what didn't go well, and what we could do better. And then people would basically put these sticky notes on the virtual board, highlighting any things that they felt we could improve upon or anything they liked during the event. And then I also did a similar approach when I was a substitute scrum master for various teams. In my retrospective meetings, I would ask team members what went well, what didn't go well, and what we could do better. And I'll take that feedback into account so we could improve upon for our future iterations.
Okay. And then what about giving feedback to others?
Yeah, so in regards to giving feedback, I prefer to be very honest and transparent with people. So if there's any issues that or concerns I might have, or even if it's just really good advice that I feel like they did at that point, I would definitely let them know about it. And then if it's more constructive feedback, I would try to phrase it in such a way that it doesn't offend them. So I would make sure to double check what I write before I send it over. And then when I do, I would make sure to observe their body language, especially if I'm talking with them in a virtual meeting. I would make sure just to see that they're okay with whatever feedback I'm giving. And if they're not, I'll try to address their concerns so we can work on resolving them together.
Okay, good. So here, all they're looking for is that someone is open to receiving feedback. I think a powerful example would be how you've received maybe some constructive criticism or feedback, how you've implemented it, and then giving an example showing that you did implement it and things were better, improved, etc. After receiving that, because everyone likes to hear that someone is seeking growth opportunities, right? And then in terms of how you give feedback, I think your answer was actually great. No changes needed there.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. So I should just find a better example for providing feedback.
Receiving.
Oh, receiving. Okay.
Yeah. And then, pick something that's not super, super bad, right? You can say like in one of our postmortems, someone recommended that I do blah blah blah, or someone felt that I did blah blah blah. And then so, to improve or to fix this, the next time I did blah blah blah, and then, the event was so much better or whatever, whatever.
Okay. So that sounds good. Thank you.
Hmm. And then you can use the same thing for like greatest weakness, greatest strength, right? You want to pick something that's like a real weakness, but not super bad. And then similarly, if someone's like, what would your manager say about you? Or what would a teammate say about you? They're looking for like some positive stuff and some negative stuff.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So, can you tell me about a time when you had to learn something new in a very short amount of time?
Yeah, I can most certainly do that. But when I was a software engineer for Tata Consultancy Services, there was a time when I was responsible for responsive email design and implementation. And basically, in that particular project, it was relatively short amount of time, only about 6 months or so. And there were only two people on the project, just me and my coworker. And although I did have experience with website design and development, this was my first time taking my knowledge and skills in that field and translating it to responsive email design and development. And to do that, I had to learn how to use this new platform called Salesforce Marketing Cloud. And although it was very similar to website design, there were definitely some nuances that I had to quickly learn and grasp. And basically, every 2 weeks or so, we had our client come in with these wireframe designs for how they wanted this email to look. And then it was basically up to me to design and implement the email successfully using the Salesforce Marketing Cloud. So what I did is I did a lot of research into the platform and then understanding what I needed to do to design these emails so they're responsive and they look great, no matter if it's for the mobile device or it's for the desktop or tablet. And then I would also reach out to my coworker if there were any issues because my coworker had a bit more knowledge and understanding around how to design for responsive emails. And then if there were any situations that arose, we would also make sure to let the client know ahead of time. But I would definitely make sure that I was able to finish these designs in a timely manner every 2 weeks or so. And if there were any issues that arose, I always made sure I was very responsive and let my coworker as well as the client know ahead of time so that we could work on resolving the issues together. And even though this was a whole new platform, I was really able to take my knowledge and experience to the next level because it was somewhat similar to website design. I was able to translate it within a short time frame and deliver these visually appealing, clear, and responsive email designs to the client.
Okay. And then, what is something that you learned from this experience that you think you would do differently next time to help you learn something new faster?
Yeah, so I would say one thing that, oh, sorry, do you mind asking that question again?
Yep. What do you think you could do differently next time to help accelerate your learning?
Yeah, so I would say something I could do next time is if there were certain courses or videos that I could take, I would definitely make sure to try to take those if I could. And I think that would have been possibly more helpful than just going through some tutorials that I found online. It's not to say those tutorials weren't helpful, but just having more of a visual feel for it and seeing and working through possible projects for how to design it, it definitely would have helped me learn and grasp the new technology faster and more efficiently.
Okay, perfect. So usually they're going to ask this type of question because they may recognize that maybe there's a software that a candidate hasn't used before, and they're going to be needing to learn how to use a new software when they join a role. Or maybe there's just a role like this one where you're going to have to do a whole bunch of stuff, right? Accounting, reconciliations, file management, data management, there's a whole bunch of stuff, admin responsibilities, planning events, right? So in this type of role, it's going to be hard to find a candidate that's, got everything. And so you're going to have to learn some stuff on the job. And so being able to give them the confidence that you have a system, you're able to break down complex ideas or things into simpler ones so that you can memorize them or understand them better. And then how you can actually test your application and knowledge, making sure that you're able to actually execute appropriately, even though it's something that's new to you, is also going to be very important. And then talking about how you're able to then scale this out afterwards, right? So that's one thing that they're going to be listening for afterwards, is after you've learned something, then maybe you created some type of user manual, or you trained another teammate on it, or you created some type of onboarding documentation. So if you were to, rotate off of your role or go on vacation, there is someone who could operate the tool or do whatever it is that you need to, in order to keep the business running. So just thinking about adding that at the end, would probably be super helpful.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, so we ran through a bunch of different questions today. So everyone, please give Lucy a huge round of applause. I think we did like 10 probably interview
Oh,
questions or so.
yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot. And so great job. If anyone has any other questions in the chat, feel free to put them in now. But yeah, Albert, back over to you. And good luck
Awesome.
next week, Lucy.
Yeah, good speed
Oh,
run.
thank you.
And yes, good luck next week, Lucy. We appreciate you coming on. Come back on anytime you'd like, especially as you get more interviews. And for the rest of you, if you're interested in watching more interviews, please go to our YouTube channel. Or if you want to be interviewed, go ahead and reach out to me and we'll get you set up. Thank you all so much again. We will see you all soon for more webinars and more events. And have a great rest of your week. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.